I wasn't looking for her. I was just killing time, staring at my phone, when I looked up and saw my wife laughing at a cafe table with the one man she promised was out of our lives forever. In that second, my chest went cold, and I knew nothing I believed was real anymore. I had gone to the cafe for the most boring reason possible. A delayed meeting, 15 minutes to spare, nowhere else to sit. It was one of those quiet places people choose when they want to be invisible. Soft music, neutral colors, no TVs, no noise. I ordered coffee without thinking, moved toward an empty table, then froze halfway through my step. She was there, not alone. She sat by the window, sunlight catching in her hair, laughing the way she used to laugh with me when the world felt safe. Across from her sat a man I recognized instantly, even though I hadn't seen him in over a year. Same posture. Same careless confidence. Same face I had memorized the night she swore she'd cut him off forever. My heart didn't race. It dropped. Heavy, dull, absolute. For a moment I told myself there had to be an explanation. A coincidence. Closure. Something innocent enough to save me from what I was already feeling. But then she leaned forward, touched his arm lightly, and smiled in a way you don't smile at a ghost from your past. I sat down without realizing it. My coffee went untouched. My hands felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. I wasn't angry yet. I was numb, watching my life crack open in public, surrounded by strangers who had no idea. A year ago, she had stood in our kitchen, eyes wet, voice shaking, and promised me he was a mistake. A lapse. A chapter closed. She had said my name like it mattered, like it anchored her to something real. I believed her because I wanted to believe that love, once damaged, could still be repaired if both people wanted it badly enough. Now I was watching her choose him again without knowing I was there. They talked easily. Comfortably. Too comfortably for two people supposedly done with each other. He said something that made her laugh harder, head tilting back, completely unguarded. That laugh had once been mine. I remembered when it used to mean I was home. I didn't confront them. I didn't storm over. I didn't even stand up. I stayed seated, invisible, and let the truth settle fully instead of chasing denial. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't closure. This was continuation. When they finally stood to leave, she grabbed her coat, and for a split second her eyes scanned the room. They passed right over me. Either she didn't see me, or she didn't expect me to be there enough for my presence to register. They left together. I stayed. The coffee went cold. So did something else inside me, something that had been quietly holding on for months, hoping the worst was behind us. That night, when she came home, she acted normal. Kissed my cheek. Asked about my day. Told me she'd met a friend for coffee and talked about work, about stress, about nothing important. She looked me in the eyes and lied without hesitation. That was the moment I understood this wasn't about temptation or confusion anymore. It was about choice. And she had already made hers. I didn't sleep. I lay there listening to her breathe, replaying every promise she'd made after the first time I caught her texting him. Every boundary. Every reassurance. Every tear that convinced me she was telling the truth. By morning, I wasn't even angry. I was clear, because the most painful realization wasn't that she was sitting with another man. It was that she was capable of doing it again, and coming home to me like nothing had happened. And once you see that, you can't unsee it. I didn't confront her the next day, or the day after that. I learned something important that morning. sitting across from her at the kitchen table while she scrolled through her phone and complained about traffic. The version of her I loved would have cracked under guilt by now. The woman in front of me was practiced, calm, comfortable. That scared me more than the cafe ever could, so I stayed quiet. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. How she angled her phone away when she texted. How she'd step into another room to take calls she used to answer right beside me. How meeting friends had become a catch-all phrase that explained entire evenings without details. I didn't snoop right away. I didn't want to be the man who needed proof because he was too weak to trust his instincts. But instincts are just warnings. Proof is clarity. 3 nights later, while she slept, her phone lit up on the nightstand. One message. No name. Just a number. Had a great time today. Same place next week? I didn't unlock her phone. I didn't need to. The timing was enough. The tone was enough. The casual certainty was enough. The next morning, I asked her, lightly, "How was coffee with your friend the other day?" She didn't hesitate. "Good." "Why?" "No reason," I said. "Just curious." She smiled and went back to her toast. That smile hurt more than if she'd snapped. Over the next week, I did something that felt both cowardly and necessary. I observed my own marriage like an outsider. I watched patterns form. Tuesdays and Thursdays became predictable. She'd dress better, leave earlier, come home lighter, happier, like she'd been fed something I wasn't providing. I checked our shared calendar. Nothing unusual. I checked our bank account. Small charges. Coffee shops. Places too far from her office to be coincidence. And then I found the email. It wasn't hidden. That was the worst part. It sat in her inbox under a generic subject line, unopened but visible on the screen when she asked me to check something for her while she showered. "Can't believe we're doing this again." Again. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. My reflection looked older than I felt. Tired. Not devastated. Just done. I closed the laptop. When she came out of the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, humming, I told her I was stepping out for a walk. I walked for nearly 2 hours. By the time I came back, I knew exactly what I was going to do. That night, I didn't accuse her. I didn't ask questions. I told her a story. "I ran into someone today," I said casually as we sat on opposite ends of the couch. "An old co-worker. He told me something interesting about second chances." She looked at me, curious. "What kind of second chances?" "The kind people ask for when they've already proven they won't change." Her expression shifted for half a second. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. I met her eyes. "Because I think you believe I'll keep believing whatever you say." Silence filled the room. Thick. Unavoidable. She laughed nervously. "I don't know what you're implying." "I saw you," I said simply. "At the cafe." Her face drained of color. "With him." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Then sighed, like someone caught skipping a step they assumed no one was watching. "It's not what you think," she said automatically. I stood up. "That's the problem. It's exactly what I think." She tried to explain. To minimize. To frame it as harmless. Familiar words. Well rehearsed. I let her talk until she ran out of air. Then I told her I was leaving. Not permanently. Not yet. Just enough to breathe. I packed a bag that night. She cried. Promised. Swore. Begged. But all I could think about was the cafe. The laugh. The ease. The choice. As I closed the door behind me, I realized something terrifying and freeing at the same time. This wasn't the moment my marriage broke. It was the moment I finally stopped holding it together alone. I stayed with my brother at first. 2 weeks on his couch, living out of a bag, answering questions with shrugs and half-truths. I told people we needed space. I told myself the same thing. The silence between us grew quickly once I left. At first she texted constantly, apologies, memories, promises wrapped in panic. Then the tone changed. Shorter messages. Fewer questions. Eventually, nothing. That should have been my warning. About a month later, a mutual friend called me. We hadn't spoken in a while. His voice was careful, like he was stepping around broken glass. I don't know if I should be telling you this, he said, but I'd want to know. I listened. She's telling people you left because you were unhappy for years. That you pushed her away. That she tried. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. And him? A pause. She says they reconnected after you left? That it just happened. I thanked him and hung up. That night, I opened social media for the first time since I'd moved out. I hadn't blocked her. I hadn't muted her. I just stopped looking. Now I scrolled. Photos appeared slowly. Like a reveal. A coffee cup on a familiar table. A reflection in a window that wasn't mine. A man's hand, always just out of frame. Subtle enough to deny, obvious enough to signal. Then came the post. Some connections never really disappear. Sometimes they just wait for the right moment. The comments were supportive. Encouraging. People talking about fate. About bravery. About following your heart. No one asked about me. That hurt more than I expected. I realized then that betrayal doesn't end when someone cheats. It continues when they rewrite the story so they don't have to carry the weight of what they did. She wasn't just moving on. She was erasing me. I moved out of my brother's place and into a small apartment on the other side of the city. I bought cheap furniture. I cooked simple meals. I started over in a way that felt both humiliating and necessary. Some nights I lay awake replaying conversations, wondering where I'd lost her. Other nights, I slept deeply, relieved I didn't have to decode lies anymore. 3 months after I left, I saw them together again. Not by accident this time. A coworker invited me to a birthday dinner at a restaurant downtown. I almost said no. Something told me to go. Halfway through the evening, I spotted her across the room. She was with him. His arm rested easily on the back of her chair. She leaned into him without thinking. She saw me too. Her smile faltered. Just for a moment. Then she looked away, choosing not to acknowledge me at all. That was the moment I understood how completely she'd already moved on, not just from the marriage, but from accountability. I didn't confront them. I didn't leave early. I finished my drink, laughed when appropriate, and walked out with my head high. Outside, the night air felt sharp and clean. I stood there longer than necessary, letting the reality settle. I wasn't part of her present anymore, and I didn't want to be. The following months were quiet. Painful, but quiet. I stopped checking her accounts. I stopped asking friends for updates. I focused on work. On exercise. On filling the hours she used to occupy with things that didn't demand anything from me except effort. Then, almost a year after the cafe, my phone buzzed with a message I didn't expect. Can we talk? No apology. No explanation. Just a question. I stared at the screen for a long time. The name felt unfamiliar now, like a place I used to live but no longer had a key to. Against my better judgment, I replied. About what? Three dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. About everything. I owe you that. I almost said no. But curiosity isn't the same as hope. And I realized I wanted to hear what she'd say, not to fix anything, but to understand how people justify breaking something they once begged to keep. We agreed to meet. The same café. I arrived first. I chose the table by the window, the same one she had sat at a year earlier. I didn't do it for symbolism. I did it because it was available. Still, when I sat down, the irony wasn't lost on me. Some places remember things even when people pretend they don't. She arrived 5 minutes late. I recognized her immediately, but something was different. Not worse. Just heavier. The confidence she'd worn so easily with him was gone. She scanned the room before spotting me, hesitated, then walked over slowly, like someone approaching a line they weren't sure they were allowed to cross. Hi, she said. Hi, I replied. She sat down, folded her hands together, then unfolded them. Nervous. That was new. For a moment neither of us spoke. The noise of the cafe filled the space, cups clinking. Quiet conversations, the low hum of a machine steaming milk. Ordinary sounds. A year ago, they would have blended into the background of my life. Now they felt amplified. You look good, she said finally. So do you, I answered, automatically, then corrected myself internally. She looked tired. Put together, but tired in the way people get when something doesn't turn out the way they planned. She ordered coffee. Black. She used to take sugar. I'll get to it, she said quickly, like she was afraid I'd stand up and leave if she didn't. I know I don't deserve this conversation. I didn't reassure her. I messed up, she continued. More than I admitted. More than I wanted to admit. I watched her carefully. The old version of me would have scanned her face for sincerity, searching for signs that this time was different. Now I just listened. You already know about him, she said. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. That's appreciated, I said. She exhaled slowly. It didn't work. There it was, not an apology. A result. What didn't? I asked. Us, she said. Him and me. I nodded once. I assumed. Her eyes flicked up. You did? Yes. She frowned slightly. Why? Because relationships built on lies rarely survive the truth. She swallowed. He wasn't what I thought he was, she said. Or maybe he was, and I just ignored it when it was convenient. I almost laughed. Almost. What do you want from me? I asked. She hesitated. I want to explain. I'm not sure explanations help, I said. But you can try. She told me a version of events I'd already pieced together myself. How the excitement faded. How the man who felt like an escape turned out to be ordinary. Demanding. Insecure. How he resented the fact that she still carried guilt about me. How she realized she hadn't left one relationship, she'd dragged its shadow into another. You were always steady, she said quietly. I mistook that for boredom. I let that sit between us. When did you realize you wanted to talk to me? I asked. She looked down at her cup. When he left. Of course. When he walked away, I thought about you, she continued. About how you didn't fight. How you just left. I didn't understand that then. And now? I asked. Now I do, she said. You left because you knew your worth. That was the first thing she'd said that felt true. I'm not here to ask you to come back, she added quickly. I know I lost that right. I just needed you to know that I see it now. What I destroyed. I studied her face. The regret was real. The sadness too. But there was something else underneath it. Hope. Faint, careful, but present. That cafe, I said suddenly. The first time. Did you know I was there? Her breath caught. No, would it have changed anything if you did? I asked. She didn't answer immediately. No, she said finally. I don't think it would have. That honesty mattered more than any apology. I didn't come here for closure, I said. I made my peace with what happened a long time ago. Then why did you come? She asked. I thought about that. About the year of rebuilding. About the nights I'd fallen asleep without wondering who she was texting. About the mornings that belonged only to me. To confirm something, I said. What? She asked. That leaving was the right decision. Her eyes filled, but she nodded. I understand. We sat in silence after that. Not awkward. Just final. When we stood to leave, she hesitated. I am sorry, she said. For all of it. I know, I replied. And I believe you. She looked relieved, like I'd handed her something she'd been carrying too long. But relief isn't reconciliation. We walked out separately. Outside, the sunlight felt warm. Familiar. I took a deep breath and realized my chest didn't ache. It hadn't throughout the entire conversation. As I walked away, I understood something clearly for the first time. She hadn't come back because she loved me. She came back because she finally felt the weight of losing me, and that made all the difference. I didn't feel the urge to call anyone after I left the cafe. No friend to debrief with, no late-night walk to burn off emotions. I went home, cooked dinner, and ate it in silence. It felt ordinary in the best possible way. That night, I slept deeply. The following weeks passed without incident. No messages from her. No accidental encounters. It was as if the conversation had closed the door so completely that even the echo was gone. I realized then how much energy I'd spent imagining what I would say if I ever saw her again, and how little of it mattered once it actually happened. Life has a way of moving forward when you stop standing in its way. I started taking longer walks in the evenings. I joined a small gym near my apartment. I began reading again, not to distract myself, but because I wanted to feel absorbed in something that didn't demand emotional labor. Slowly, the version of me who'd been betrayed stopped being the main character in my own story. A few months later, I met someone new, not in a dramatic way. Not at a cafe. Just through a friend, at a small gathering where no one was trying to impress anyone else. She asked questions and waited for answers. She listened without planning her response. I noticed that immediately. When I told her about my past, I didn't feel the need to edit it. I didn't minimize or dramatize. I stated facts. She didn't flinch. That sounds painful, she said simply. I'm glad you didn't stay where you weren't valued. That sentence stayed with me. We took things slowly. I didn't confuse intensity with intimacy this time. I paid attention to consistency. To how someone showed up when there was nothing to gain. I learned that trust isn't rebuilt by grand gestures, but by small, repeated moments of reliability. Sometimes, late at night, I thought about the cafe. About how one unplanned glance had dismantled the future I thought was solid. But I no longer saw it as a moment of loss. It was a moment of clarity. Because that day, watching her laugh with another man, I didn't just lose a marriage. I gained myself. I gained the understanding that love without respect is just attachment. That forgiveness without change is self-betrayal. And that walking away isn't failure, it's alignment. A year earlier, my heart had sunk in that cafe. I'd thought it was the lowest point of my life. Now I knew better. It was the beginning of everything that came after.